there is excitement for the individuals who complete the initiation. This is where I perceive light language being used in the King's Chamber. As an individual's vibration begins to fluctuate, whereas this was not something that was so common before, there is great learning and great retention of mastery. This feels like Kemet. It feels like I am doing work inside of a chamber in a pyramid in a different lifetime. It feels possibly there's a connection with Atlantis because we still know how to use things. There's technology and an understanding that we still have. So I'm slightly unclear if this is there's some overlap with Atlantis and Egypt. I don't know if this is the beginning of Kemet, but this is a smaller community. It feels like, so the community is not secretive, it is advanced. There are primitive communities that we are aware of. We do not resist these other communities. We sort of leave them alone. We don't take on their evolution as our responsibility, but we are also happy to teach when we feel an energetic pull, where there is an attraction or a benefit. There's some force that believes that this is, a good time to teach. So when the calling is there, we will interact with these more primitive humans. But mostly that is not our focus. It is carrying on the ways and continuing to teach what will be lost. And I'm unclear on if Atlantis already happened, the fall of Atlantis already happened, or if we split off before that happened. But I perceive that the focus of this community is to just continue with the initiations. It does, maybe this is after Atlantis, because there's a way of doing things that is slightly more dense. It's more physical than it had to be before. So it feels like there is the ways of connection are, we can only do it because we know it so well. Before it was just much easier and effortless, but it does feel like there's a stronger density on the planet. So the initiations are created, physical initiations, these rituals that were modified for the density to create the closest effect as to what was done differently before when it wasn't so dense. These initiations are done to purify the mind. People are interacting with lower frequencies, but it isn't the same struggle that it is today in Katie's life. It's just beginning where there are thoughts that were not so much accessible before. So the beginning of consciousness descending. And so these initiations are to continue purifying an individual's thoughts, their actions, their connection to their heart. And we don't see this as heartbreaking or tragic that consciousness is descending. We see it in its highest form as an opportunity to know ourselves through density. Although, caveat, this is not as dense as what the world is like today. So it's almost like getting to know yourself through having a judgment for the first time in your life. So it's so innocent still. But there is appreciation and excitement to know yourself through contrast. That as an individual's vibration begins to fluctuate, whereas this was not something that was so common before, there is great learning and great retention of mastery. It is almost more mastery than what was before. And that is why there is an excitement in the community, because this requires focus, this requires clarity, this requires intention. This isn't just, no, like the pyramids are no longer creating this heaven on earth. We have to find that connection in ourselves. There is also this information about people who, like me, who could anchor in this frequency of heaven on earth within our community. So the community is still, in the most part, very, very connected to Source. But the frequencies that we are creating and amplifying they're not having the same powerful effect on nature as they used to. And so again, it is the opportunity for the individual to choose to perceive through the eyes of Source something that may not be reflecting its own knowing. And there is complete acceptance for if one begins to not perceive in that way and they start to feel separation and emptiness. And there is just an overwhelming feeling of support for each other. And the pyramid is used to recharge people, to help them heal through the things that they are learning, to help them remember their connection as they begin to lose it. And it all feels very, very good. It's very pure, and we're very excited to be able to help people remember, to help them not remember what it used to be, but to remember how to connect so that they are in that frequency again. I'm being reminded now of the sarcophagus. There is excitement for the individuals who complete the initiation to serve as that sphere. So now, instead of that energy coming through the top of the pyramid and naturally going through a sphere and into the water, into the planet, everything being amplified through this highly advanced technology, we get to be the technology. We use the sarcophagus to travel to these different places, to share information, to exchange knowledge, and then we bring that back in our frequency and we anchor that into the pyramid manually. And there's just a sense of reverence and great privilege for being able to do this task, for being chosen and entrusted with something so important. It feels like such an honor. It does not feel like we are better than, it feels like we are being recognized. It's this feeling of Source seeing us entirely and having groomed us and supported us to be capable of these gifts. And so it's coming from a place of complete trust that everyone is exactly where they need to be. And had we not gone through the things that we have experienced in many other lifetimes, we would not have been entrusted with such a task. And so as we see others who go through hardship and difficulty, we know that there is so much that they will step into, and that the value of every single life is immeasurable. This is where I perceive light language being used in the King's Chamber. And I'm seeing the walls like glowing. It's almost like glow in the dark paint or something. There's a sense of illumination without it being bright. It feels more magical, like bioluminescence. And it's almost like it's interacting with our songs. Like the consciousness of the stones they are doing something as they hear our song, as they hear our tone, as they feel the vibration that we are emitting in ritual. This feels like it is both similar and separate to when we astral travel through the sarcophagus. This is a different thing that we used to do inside of this chamber. It's like interacting with the pyramid and reminding it of its consciousness. It's like when you speak to an animal and it's all telepathic communication back. We're nurturing the pyramid. We are keeping the portals open, and each frequency of each stone is connected to different star systems. And as those frequencies come through our light language, they are nourishment to the portals that connect us with each different star system. So there are coordinates on the walls that connect us with star systems like the Pleiades. And as that Pleiadian energy comes through our light language, that specific consciousness of that specific stone is recharged and nurtured, and the portal is maintained. And this feels joyful for us. It feels sacred and like a great gift. And again, it just feels really, really beautiful.
Is there any more information here? Any other places to explore here?
I'm wondering if the sarcophagus held water like the square beneath the sphere in the last scene held water. And it is unclear. I feel as though there's something about the center of the room with the geometry and the same idea of that place of levitation where the resonance is most pure. This is where we would use the crystal and what is it? There's a way that the technology fit together that would resonate the frequency of these special crystals. And I'm being told that it's not time yet for me to know that it will come. It is just not yet time for this to be brought into the collective. And through my awareness, it would be shared, and that is not in the highest good. So they will not yet show me how to rebuild it, but that it is possible to rebuild it in this lifetime if I so choose.
Is there a
And
time frame that they will give?
I just have the feeling that after 2027, 2028, everything will be so different that so much more will be able to come in. I don't know if it will come in at that time, but there is a density that is preparing to leave the planet, and we have to wait until after that consciousness has gone through its own process of departing. It is almost like a metaphor of the atomic and nuclear energy. If we are given that information too soon, we will misuse it. Not me, but it could be misused. And so we just have to wait until the consciousness of the collective is at a point where there is no risk of its misuse.
I've gotten similar information
Mm.
around that and um, disclosure
Yeah,
that that resonates.
it is all connected.
Yes,
Everybody is perceiving different angles of the same truth, the same event.
yes. So we're just going to drift away from that life. We're drifting and floating away from that life, leaving the woman there to continue with her own journey. May I speak to the highest self of Katie, please?
Yes.
I know the highest self could have brought forth many different lifetimes for Katie to see today. You chose to bring forward these two lifetimes for her to see. Why did you pick these two lifetimes?
Purpose. It's to show purpose, to show why she is here, and it is to remember how to embody those frequencies. Her body will be able to hold the light like it had once and has many times. The DNA will remember. It's a gradual process of moving through density, releasing distortion, purifying the geometric structure to be able to support that purity of light. The second lifetime was to show the joy, the fulfillment, the satisfaction of mastery, and how this is the hardest of all. The density is so strong, and so much has been lost and distorted along the way. To master oneself in these conditions is the most fulfilling way to return back to home while in physicality. There have been many, many lifetimes where persecution was the theme. And these lifetimes were attempts to reach the level of mastery that Jesus had. And it was these attempts to be able to not hold the people accountable who were murdering her. Attempts to be so connected to your knowing that even in the threat of losing your life, you don't lose it. That is the ultimate reflection of mastery that many admire about Christ. So this is coming up because there's storage of resentment and distrust that is holding Katie in separation from the connection because of these other lifetimes where she forgot the tests she chose to go through. And that is also okay. The tests were not failures. They just point at how hard it is, and they provide compassion. There is no such thing as failure. This is being shared to assist in offering the answer for the question of what is the point of being murdered? What is the point of having your life cut short by the choice of another? What is the point of being burned on the stake, drowned, nailed up, of being crucified? What is the point of being stoned to death or tortured? The point is the test, to find where you lose your connection. That is very valuable data. And there were many lifetimes where Katie did not lose her connection until the confusion set in. And while she learned to not take that anger and resentment out on people and humans, she turned it towards the universe, which is herself. Because there is a deep knowing that we planned this together. And so in turning against the universe, you are separating from yourself. And you are loved through that experience. And that experience is accepted. And it is only possible because separation is never fully possible, as the connection is always the truth. We get to experience the separation to learn through, and it is still safe.
So this not trusting the universe to not abandon her, or trusting the universe hasn't abandoned her. This is kind of like she's been abandoning herself.
There are different words that
Those may not
will
have been the right words.
penetrate. No, let me find them. It is first, it is even in your abandonment experience, you are never alone. You just cannot feel our presence the same way. It is not an experience of abandoning the self, but it is the illusion doing its job. The illusion is not something to resist. It is put in place as an expression of source. Every single thing is. Even the experience of abandonment. The image is coming to mind for Katie of the circle that we showed her, where the metaphor of source at the top, you can reach that place through high vibration or low vibration. They both fold and meet and unite. The problem is when, I should say, the suffering occurs for humans when they are going through the spiral of negativity, and rather than seeing it all the way through to finding how it isn't true and that it is just illusion, and that Source has been there the whole time. They stop right before reaching that point and try to be strong all on their own. And then they wonder why we abandoned them. This is where the degree of separation occurs. This is where the distortion lies that is seeking to be released. The depth of the negative, of the darkness that you can explore shows how much work you've done, where you can find harmony in it, where you can find connection in it, where you can go through the suffering and not have it break your spirit. But where you separate is where you are separating, and is just that little part that is so close to being reunited with Source. But the opposite is also true of going through positive emotions. It's a lot easier to ride that momentum up to Source and the feeling good that is provided when we reconnect. But both are equally valuable, both are equally accessible. Some experience limitation and ceilings in how good they can feel, and some experience floors in how bad they can feel. Both of those limitations, floors and ceilings, are preventing the experience uniting with Source again.
Well, she used that, having an understanding to get past her ceilings and setting a new set point. If you have any information to help her maintain her connection.
The test was passed of the negative spiral most recently that has been attempted to be breached for a very long time. And in the most challenging of circumstances, she slowed down and stayed connected with her heart through the darkness and remembered what we have been waiting for her to remember. And so she is picking up on the next steps, which are now working the other half of that circle. The next steps are, as you asked, about removing the ceilings. Now that you can master yourself and you have removed the floors. This will come with time as she opens herself more to the desire to stay in a good place, and her perception is changing where she can see the value of that for her now. And it is also appropriate because prior to this, she wanted to learn those lessons. And so it was not as important for her to keep the good emotions going, to stay in positivity that was not serving her. And now it is time for the shift. And the last statement on this is to remember when you look out at others who keep continuing to choose the thing that causes them pain, that is a divine choice. It is not just a divine freedom, but in choosing that, they are making the right choice.
Well, thank you. Now, she has questions regarding her rainouts. What is the root cause? Why is this on her path? What can we know about this?
It is residual from the end of life distortions, from being burned alive. It is not such a bad, debilitating illness, but it is there because the energy that holds her in separation is from that feeling of being set up for failure by the universe, of being abandoned, of having the experience of being murdered, for doing good. That is what is also informing the sealing. So this is all interconnected, and this is why it was allowed to manifest in this life, to point her in the direction of the wounds so she can travel to them and heal them, shift them, and release them as time allows.
She'll be happy to understand that more. Now, speaking of the persecutions, will we be able to clear some of that or all of that energy today?
I feel energy is shifting.
Wonderful.
The limitation on the amount is based on the soul desire to embody and integrate that more consciously. It is the soul's desire to have the satisfaction of remembering connection in face of that experience. And so it is not supposed to just go away. It is supposed to be worked with.
So that was the lifetime that I had in ancient Egypt. There were a few things that, as I re listened to the recording, I wanted to clarify. A few different concepts that I felt were really important to make sure the transmission came all the way through. So, one of these topics that I wanted to touch on was this idea that we were able to perceive through the eyes of Source. It's the ability to reflect back an image that is even more pure because of your knowing. That's kind of a pretty complicated topic. It's a really big concept. The best way that I have figured out how to articulate this is to really sort of imagine for a moment that everything is holding up mirrors. So all mirrors can reflect the divine expression clearly, but as consciousness is descending, those mirrors must also match that default. And so the best analogy that I have come up with is to imagine the side mirrors on your car. It's one of those things where it's not so distorted that you can't understand what it is, that you can't recognize the image that's being shown to you. But it is distorted in a way where everything appears to be further. It appears to be more separate from you than it actually is in reality. And the task then becomes understanding the mirror so that you can extract the most value from it. Sometimes the purpose of a mirror is to zoom out so that you can get more information by being zoomed out than you can actually be in reality. And sometimes the purpose is to show you something that is so clearly not true, like the mirror in a funhouse, so that you can realize a mirror is there. Each mirror is valuable and has purpose, but we run into problems sometimes when we forget that a mirror is a mirror. And we start to believe the face value of what is being reflected back to us. The goal is to know truth so well that you can take in a distorted reality and reflect back truth anyway. In these times now, the strength of your vibration is a direct reflection of how much truth you remember. And so getting in touch with your truth, with your authenticity, expressing your truth, feeling that truth, and appreciating anything that makes you question your own truth, it's all to serve moving you into more certainty. And as you move into more certainty, you're moving into your knowing, you're moving into your heart. So the question then becomes, can you see the divine in something that cannot see it yet in itself? When you can, when your knowing is so strong and unshakable, reality around you will change. Not because you are shifting out of it, but because you are allowing it to shift out of distortion. And this is where all power lies. It lies in knowing the divine in everything, in remembering and embodying and reliving interconnectedness. And in order to know this in another, you have to first know it in yourself. And it's not about perfection. It really is just about connection. So that's a really big concept, and I could elaborate on it a lot more, but I wanted to also hit on a few other points that came up in that video. One of those other topics was the frequencies and the coordinates that are inside of the king's chamber in the stones. And so the way that this was explained to me in that meditation, as well as other meditations with my guides, is the understanding of what it really means as above, so below. It's that we live in a nature where there is fractaling geometry. And once you can understand the mathematics of sacred geometry, once a civilization can really understand those mathematics, they can then take the frequencies of this fractal way up here and duplicate it here. And that can be expressed through artwork, that could be expressed through archaeology, that can be expressed through the size, shape, and structure of a stone. And we see this in Teotihuacan, the dimensions and the proportions and the ratios, how everything is laid out, not just in the actual architecture of one building, but the layout of the entire site is reflecting the cosmos above and the same exact ratios and how it would map out in our current sky. We also see this with the three pyramids in the Giza Plateau, with the way that they align to Orion. And so this is the same exact concept. It's not that the coordinates are the length and the width and the depth of the actual stone. It's that the stone took on that shape because of the frequency that it was embodying to depict the portal of that constellation, of that star system, of the planets that are there. It's that frequency that is captured in that. And because our night sky is also mathematical, which is way beyond me, but because of how that fits perfectly, that is why all of the stones that are building the king's chamber also fit perfectly, and why each stone is its own separate coordinate, it's its own separate frequency, and why we were using light language to be able to remind that frequency, to restore that frequency, to be able to breathe life into that frequency of these different places. So another thing that I wanted to hit on, just because this was starting to get into my higher self portion of my past life regression and my full PQH session, I had talked about Raynaud's. And what Raynaud's is just where there's really bad circulation in your capillaries, in your fingers and your toes. And I wanted to just hit on this very briefly because in that part I said something about how time allows for this to be changed. I didn't mean that it will just change with time. What I actually meant, and I didn't say, is that time travel allows for this to be healed, because that is what was coming through at that time, is that right now, because of the way that time is folding and because of this unique access point that we have with switching between yugas and all this other stuff that I don't even understand, that I don't even know if anybody really understands the possibilities that are happening right now. But because of this lifetime, we can travel to these other lifetimes. We can revisit these other fractals, these other parallel, all of it. We can access it all in this incarnation, to go and heal it, to release the distortion, to bring in restoration of things that have been corrupt in our DNA. And we can actually affect physicality in a way that I don't think has ever been possible. And so that's what's really exciting about it. And maybe it is possible. Maybe it has been, in other star systems and stuff, but this is really, really a special time. And that is what was coming through right at that part where I was talking about how time will allow for this to be healed. So other than that, I think that is about everything I wanted to hit on from the actual past life that was in Kemet. And so I would love to hear what you thought. There will be a part 3, which is going to be the second half of my BQH session. The second half is where the facilitator calls in my higher self to ask all of the questions that I gave her in advance that I wanted to know to help guide me on my path in my journey. I was not planning on sharing this. I had a little bit of resistance towards sharing this, but when I asked my guides what was necessary and what would be most appropriate, They told me that for multiple reasons, to share this would be extremely beneficial. For me, the growth opportunity is that I have a fear of being put on a pedestal. I don't want to be depended on. I don't want people to think that I am separate from them. I don't want to be anybody's savior. And that is because of other lifetimes where I had that role. And so I have a very strong resistance to being seen because of that. I don't want to have this pressure of being somebody's connection. I really want to empower people to find their own connection, to help them tap back into that birthright, to help them be who they really are. And so this is challenging and vulnerable for me. The other thing that they said it would be beneficial to share this for is because when I perceive the masters who have lived here, it was almost like I believed they were not having so much of a human experience, that they just never had doubts because they were so connected, or that they didn't have to go through the extremes of challenging times because they knew exactly what they were here for, and they were just so enlightened in all of this. And so I have recently been having a lot of information coming in into my experience to show me that that's not how it happened for them either. They very much had tears. They very much experienced confusion. They very much had doubts and sometimes felt disconnected and separate from. And that, I think, is what they are trying to also have me help with, is that as I'm going through my journey, they want me to reveal that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and they want me to kind of be like a living record because we don't have much of that. It's not about being less human. It's actually about fully embracing being a human, fully embracing the illusion, fully embracing that we are here and we chose to be here. And every single part of this is divine. The matrix is divine. And they also wanted me to do this because it's about showing how there is nothing to hide. There is nothing that is to be kept in darkness. There is nothing that should be hidden from reality. It is all part of. And so it's not about changing reality into something better than it really is. It's truly just about embracing reality. So I will be sharing part 3, unbeknownst to me, until about half an hour ago. But anyway, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this, and please comment if there's any questions, any other topics that that maybe I didn't cover that you would like to go into. So thank you.